The absurd grows more bizarre. Brandon Aiyuk is now posted wearing Commanders gear. You could see the Washington Commanders hat in both of these photos there with the caption, "Stop the cap. The gig is up." Now, remember that he was charged with a misdemeanor street racing charge just a few days ago by the Santa Clara County District Attorney's Office. And shortly after that charge and arrest warrant dropped, Brandon Aiyuk made his way to the local racetrack to do this. That post on Instagram included several pictures, including this one right here. So, I mean, this is obviously reaching crazy, crazy levels. My guess is that Brandon Aiyuk right now, I mean, there are multiple levels to this because there's now a misdemeanor criminal charge involved. But on the football side of things, Mike and I have been talking about this off air. We have a feeling that Brandon Aiyuk is probably feeling the heat of not being released by the 49ers. Obviously, the Commanders in San Francisco do not have a trade in place. If there had been a trade in place over the course of the past few months that was supposed to be ratified after June 1st, when it made salary cap sense for the 49ers to trade Brandon Aiyuk, that would have already happened, right? We're sitting here on June 6th and no trade has been consummated. So the theory of something being done behind the scenes between the 49ers and the Commanders, that theory extinguished. That theory is not valid. As of right now, Aiyuk is on the 49ers. He certainly would like San Francisco to release him if he does want to play for Washington. And based on the fact that he's posting pictures in Commanders gear, I would have guessed that he wants that to be the case. But his big issue is twofold now. A, the 49ers don't have to do anything. And I'm not even talking about keeping him through late August, early September. They don't have to do anything as the situation stands right now, even past then, unless Brandon Aiyuk responds to the ball being in his court. The 49ers are not in line to pay Brandon Aiyuk any money right now. He's on the left squad list. He actually would have to change that. He actually would have to swallow his pride and change that by forcing the 49ers' hand and showing up to their facility. That is problem one for Brandon Aiyuk. Problem two is that there is a warrant out for his arrest in Santa Clara County. So if he wants to show up to break this impasse that we see right now, he'd get arrested in Santa Clara County, assuming they don't try to go find him wherever he's at right now. So, I mean, this has just gone in mind-numbingly crazy directions. And I think that we are not seeing very rational posts from Brandon Aiyuk to follow up rather irrational behavior because he's feeling the heat. If he wants one outcome here, and that's the 49ers releasing him, well, San Francisco doesn't have to do it. And resolving this, if you're Brandon Aiyuk, just got a whole lot more complicated with a misdemeanor charge and an arrest warrant that dropped in early June. My next question about all of this, and maybe we can say that this has three layers. Will the 49ers try to claw back some of the money that they paid Brandon Aiyuk with that massive extension in 2024? Because it might be setting up for San Francisco to have a case and a grievance. I mean, I think it's been setting up that way for a while, but now they've got even more pillars of evidence, pillars of argument in a potential grievance. To refresh on the situation, the 49ers, although they are no longer paying Brandon Aiyuk right now while he's on the left squad list, they paid him $48.4 million ever since the $120 million contract extension was signed in August of 2024. He earned a big signing bonus from the 49ers and then a guaranteed option bonus in 2025. Originally, it looked like 2026, this year, would also be a no-brainer guarantee, but the 49ers were able to void those guarantees when Aiyuk started missing team meetings and rehab appointments in 2025. So the totality of what has been paid to Brandon Aiyuk since that contract was signed is $48.4 million. Now, it was signed with some contractual protections for the 49ers. And when Brandon Aiyuk started missing rehab, and when he started missing team meetings, and then when he just walked out on the team entirely later in the 2025 season, I think it's very clear that some, if not many, of the clauses in that contract were broken, which gives the 49ers potential recourse through a grievance to try to get back some of that $48.4 million. Now, it is very difficult logistically to get back money that's already been paid out to a player. It would take an extraordinary circumstance for this to happen. And normally you see it happen when somebody retires, when they don't, you go back and get some of the signing bonus money because the bonus was paid out under the assumption that the player would play out the duration of his contract. And for Brandon Aiyuk, that was several seasons worth up to $120 million. Typically, it's not as simple as, even if you have a ruling in your favor as a team, it's not as simple as the player being forced to wire the money back to you. Typically, you're going to reclaim some of that money through, future paychecks essentially being diverted back to the football team. And then that could help the football team's salary cap situation. So it's offsets in the future if Brandon Aiyuk does somehow continue playing. One thing I will note is that there had been some speculation, and I don't know exactly what kind of cardiovascular shape he's in, but based on this picture right here, it doesn't appear that Brandon Aiyuk is overweight. It looks like, physically he might be in decent shape. I mean, this is all that we have to go off of. So I don't know how much he's been working out. He hasn't posted anything about that. But I do know that if he does play elsewhere, the 49ers would have the ability to file a grievance and to see if they can offset some of his contract to go back into their account and help their salary cap situation moving forward. And with $48.4 million already paid out to Brandon Aiyuk, you would think that the 49ers might feel that quite a bit of that, like a fairly large chunk of that, should go back to them since he walked out on the team in 2025. And their case only gets stronger if there's a criminal charge involved, like the street racing in front of Levi Stadium that Aiyuk posted onto YouTube, that is now the subject of the arrest warrant and obviously the misdemeanor charge in Santa Clara County. And I would argue, and maybe there's a clause in the contract, I'm not privy to the contract, but wearing another team's gear, and he has a Commander's hat on here, and the football is a Commander's logo on it. When a team has paid out over $48 million, when they gave you a contract worth up to $120 million, I don't think that they're too keen on you wearing another team's gear while you're still under that contract. And maybe somebody who's familiar with NFL contracts can let me know about the fine print, but I would not be surprised if there are clauses in contracts that, let's put it very bluntly, frown on players wearing the gear of other teams. And that could all be ammo for the 49ers in a grievance if they do try to claw back some of Brandon Aiyuk's money. You could talk about the racing video in front of Levi's Stadium. You could talk about the fact that he's putting on Commander's gear and putting it on social media. You could obviously talk about the fact that he hadn't reported to work and that he left the squad in the midst of that contract. I mean, there's a whole laundry list of things that the 49ers can bring to any potential hearing, and how this all plays out is going to be absolutely fascinating. Again, for Aiyuk to get this situation to move in the direction that it seems that he wants, based on his posts, he's going to have to force the 49ers' hand to move off of their current position. He cannot show up to mandatory veteran minicamp because that's been canceled. That's not happening next week. So the next mandatory event that Brandon Aiyuk can show up to is training camp. But now he's going to have to resolve that misdemeanor charge because of the warrant out for his arrest in Santa Clara County. If he does show up at training camp, I think, needless to say, the 49ers will not want that distraction around the team. And I think that itself, like that simple act from Brandon Aiyuk, could force the 49ers to release him on the spot. theoretically, the 49ers can continue to play hardball. And, there's also a whole laundry list of requirements for Brandon Aiyuk to be in line to actually get paid the big option bonus. And that's something that you would have to hold the 49ers feet to the fire with in order to get released. But he actually would have to pass a physical, right? You can't just show up out of shape, unable to run routes, unable to perform at an NFL level and expect to be in line for money. So there's a whole laundry list of things that Brandon Aiyuk would have to accomplish in order to be in line to make that sort of money. But I think that the mere presence around the 49ers facility, if he's willing to do that, I think would trigger the 49ers to release him and get what he wants. But if there's a level of stubbornness here, which I think is very apparent, that Brandon Aiyuk, does not want to overcome, then the 49ers can just sit there and not do anything. And maybe that's dawning on Aiyuk right now, and maybe that's why we're starting to see this erratic social media behavior. I can firmly say that we've never seen anything like this for a player in a 49ers uniform. I mean, we've seen contract hold-ins, we've seen holdouts. Obviously, Aiyuk was one of those hold-ins in 2024, but to see something go off the rails as much as this, I haven't seen it before. Good news for the 49ers is that their receivers are looking really good to close the spring program. I mean, we saw Pearsall making plays a couple weeks ago. We saw Dejon Stribling making a ton of plays along with Mike Evans and Jacob Cowing over the course of the practices that closed this session. Their receiver room is deeper and stronger, I think, than at any point of the Kyle Shanahan era right now. And you even had George Kittle talking about the 49ers finally having a big veteran presence wide receiver, a true vet presence wide receiver in the room for the first time since Emmanuel Sanders was on this team in 2019. So I'm happy to answer some of your questions. If there are any other posts about Brandon Aiyuk while we're talking right now, I'll be sure to save them. And yeah, Pearsall the other day was taking a veteran day off. The 49ers have been sitting a lot of veterans. I know that there's a lot of worry about whenever a guy misses practice. You shouldn't read too far into things when they happen, especially during the spring, because Mike Evans missed a practice and he was all the way out in Texas a couple weeks ago. Nobody was worrying about that. Wait until training camp. Wait till this gets real. All the 49ers needed to do through spring was showcase some of the younger guys, make sure that they demonstrated that they belonged. And I think they saw that from Dejon Stribling, especially. Boy, he was good to close out spring for the 49ers. He's fast. And you could tell that he knows what he's doing out on the field. He passed the initial test, and now he's going to have to pass subsequent tests once the pads do come on. All right, I'm moving over into the comment section. Let's talk. Brandon Aiyuk is not making a case for him to be a commander by his conduct. No. I think, any NFL team in its right mind should be scared of this type of behavior. So I don't think that it's helping Brandon Aiyuk at all. And I do think that, and I agree with Mike, and he brought this theory up when we were texting early, it seems emblematic of panic because I think the 49ers realize that the ball's in their court, and unless Brandon Aiyuk does something, they don't have to release him. They, in fact, this is the best case scenario for the 49ers at this point. Aiyuk doesn't show up, continues to be stubborn. 49ers can just sit there, not pay him. And the money they've already paid him, I talked about the $48.4 million. Well, it doesn't all hit their salary cap at once. It's spread out over the course of the next several years because of the prorations. If he's still technically on the team, even if he's on the left squad list, that money stays stretched out like an accordion. It stays prorated. So the 49ers benefit against the salary cap if they don't release Brandon Aiyuk. Now, I mentioned it the other day. At what point does Aiyuk's behavior become erratic enough? And maybe this is his end game. I don't know. But at what point does his behavior become erratic enough that the 49ers say, well, this is just too much of a risk to be on our employment list? Because technically he still is an employee of the 49ers, right? Technically he's still under contract. They haven't released or fired him yet. And the reason that they haven't is really because of those salary cap prorations. They benefit from it too, and they protect themselves in the event of him turning around and signing with a rival. They prevent that from happening at essentially no cost. But I say essentially because the one cost is the cost of risk to the 49ers as an organization. in case Aiyuk goes and does something crazy off the field. And he already has sped by Levi Stadium, and he's already caught a charge for that. The thing, though, there is that the 49ers knew about that way back in December when Aiyuk posted the YouTube video, and then the authorities announced they were going to investigate it. It's been, what, half a year, and now the charge finally did drop, but it's not like Aiyuk's behavior in that case is news to the 49ers, so their stance probably has not changed. But if something else happens off the field, well, we have to reevaluate and revisit how the 49ers feel about keeping Aiyuk on the team. Right now, though, they are benefiting when it comes to the salary cap and those prorations, and maybe they can go and claw back some of that money moving forward. Natasha says, I think the Niners should leave him on the left squad list and then wait until right before the regular season starts to cut him. Don't reward him. Yes, but I think they could keep him longer than that. If he doesn't show up, it's not like he's in line to earn that bonus. You know, there's this option bonus. It's like 20, I think it's 25, $26 million that is supposed to hit on September 1st. But if it's not like it's automatically going to go to Aiyuk's bank account, he has to meet his contractual obligations in order to be in line to make that money. So it's not like hold him and then we have to release him at a certain point. That's not how the 49ers have to be thinking. They're thinking, hey, if Aiyuk just stays away from the facility, and now he's going to get arrested if he shows up in Santa Clara County. There's a warrant out for his arrest. The 49ers don't have to pay anything, and they can continue keeping Aiyuk on this left squad list holding pattern. And I think that might be why Aiyuk is freaking out, because the 49ers are definitely sitting in the position of power here if he's too stubborn to even show up to the facility to move this situation along. If Aiyuk gets suspended by the NFL for some reason, how does that hurt the Niners? It doesn't really hurt the Niners at all, because they've already come to terms with the fact that he's not going to play for them again. Like if they had plans for Aiyuk to play, then obviously a suspension would hurt them because they would be down him as a player. But if he gets suspended, well, that would be no pay. He's already not getting paid because he's not at the facility. It would essentially be the same thing that's happening right now. So the 49ers, really any disciplinary action from the NFL, since the 49ers have already resolved that Aiyuk is not going to play for them again, it actually benefits the 49ers in any potential standoff. Also, the longer that Aiyuk sits, and he has not played in an NFL game since week 7 of 2024, the more set up to fail he is. You can't just take multiple years off in the National Football League and expect to come back ready to compete. This is the most brutal, difficult league in the world. And the 49ers know this. The 49ers know the time is on their side. They know that they could just sit there and, again, at the end of the day, Aiyuk has to take the ball that is in his court, and he's got to make a play with it. He can't just let the status quo continue, because that definitely benefits the 49ers. Ryan is now asking about the Myles Garrett trade. David, do you think the Rams blinked? They already had what most people said, or what some people said was the best roster, but they must have had some insecurity. Not that they got a great player, but they gave up a young one in assets. Well, the trade is fascinating to me. Okay, they get Myles Garrett, who might be the best player in football right now. Obviously, a future Hall of Famer. Obviously, an upgrade for the Rams, right? Obviously, today they're better than they were before they made the trade this past week. But you're absolutely right in that they lost Jared Verse, who probably has a longer window of being an elite player than Myles Garrett, because he's, 4 or 5 years younger than Myles Garrett, maybe 5 or 6 years younger than Myles Garrett. The Rams are thinking in terms of now, because this might be Matthew Stafford's last year. That's as simple as it is. They have gotten themselves stronger right now. They might be and probably will be weaker as a result in the long term because of this. They've lost the picks. They're going to lose the cap space. They've lost the younger player. I'll say one thing. For the rest of the league, this would have been a massive, 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 maybe even irredeemable headache had the Rams somehow been able to keep Jared Verse and acquire Myles Garrett. If you had Myles Garrett on one edge and Jared Verse on the other, and Byron Young as an extra edge rusher, that'd be a big problem. But the fact that they lost the verse to gain Garrett means that the improvement for the Rams is much more marginal. And I think anybody saying, yeah, they're going to get worse in the long term because of this is absolutely right as well. So they take this massive aggressive swing for now. It does hurt them a little bit more moving forward. And there's a massive risk involved because now you're very Myles Garrett dependent without Jared Verse on the team. The Rams already had a good pass rush last year. The issue really was the secondary. So I think that the more impactful trade when it comes to actual defensive efficiency for them might be the Trent McDuffie trade, right? This is probably going to be a top 5 defense. That's what they're lining up for. But another thing is that the Rams, when you talk about panicking or whatever, well, I think that they realize, and a lot of fans and media doesn't realize this, it's going to be hard for that offense in LA to stay top 3. Matthew Stafford is a year older. Devontae Adams already breaking down, I think, a year older. Puka Nakua's been in and out of rehab this year. The Rams ran a ton of 13 personnel last year that I thought caught the league off guard a little bit. The league has probably been watching tape. I'm not so sure that the Rams are going to be a shoe-in top 5 offense anymore. And if Sean McVay saw that, and he saw the defense last year, struggling in the secondary, the special teams was terrible, but he said, okay, the offense, top 2 offense is leading this team. But if they can't maintain that, if Sean McVay is a little bit worried that this offense is going to drop down to number 7, number 8, top 10 offense, not a top 5 offense, the Rams had to get better defensively. And I think what we're seeing right now is the Rams recognizing that their offense is aging and perhaps losing an edge. So they've got to get the defense into the top 5 instead to lead this team. And obviously special teams has to be better. Special teams cost them multiple times last year against the Seattle Seahawks. But here's the rub with the Rams. If that's the case, if the offense falls out of the top 5 and the defense enters the top 5, they're not much better off than the 49ers and the Seahawks. They're 2 NFC West rivals. We already know that the Seahawks can be a dual top 10 team. They showed us that in their Super Bowl run and their win last year. And guess what? The Seahawks had the best special teams in the league. The Rams certainly didn't. That was, I think, the difference between the Seahawks and the Rams last year. The 49ers beat both Seattle and LA, beat both of these teams shorthanded last year. Then they got too shorthanded, so of course they couldn't hang anymore, but they still won 13 games. But the 49ers returned Nick Bosa. They returned Fred Warner. They added Mike Evans. They added Osa Odighizuwa. They added Dre Greenlaw. We already see their draft class working in Dejon Stribling and in Kalen Black. I think they're going to play Romello Height. I think he's going to be an important piece. It certainly is not out of the question and may even be in the realm of probability that the 49ers are a dual top 10 team as well this year. The offense was already top 5 last year, and they have way better receivers now. I think it's going to be a top 5 offense for the 49ers. The big question is, can that defense, A, stay healthy, and B, if it is healthy, will it be a top 10 unit or even top 12? Because if it is, then all of a sudden you're in the same efficiency ballpark as both the Rams and the Seahawks. And there you go. So many people freak out about one player here, one player there. Myles Garrett trade is case in point A. They don't look at overall team construction and depth and efficiency. And that all points to the NFC West being this 3-horse race that is going to be extremely, extremely intense. And the Rams nudged forward a little bit with the addition of Myles Garrett, but you cannot ignore the massive, massive strides the 49ers made this offseason, and you cannot ignore the fact that the Seattle Seahawks are the defending world champions who showed a little bit of something in all 3 phases of the game to close last season. Will Lenoir be traveling this year? I don't know. I'm not really sure what Raheem Morris has in mind for Deommodore Lenoir. I think training camp will give us some hints. I think that the 49ers will get more adaptable on the back end. Absolutely. I think that they're going to value cornerback coverage skills more than safety coverage skills for the big nickel position, for example. I'm excited to see what they do with their linebacker spot with Raheem Morris and Matt Eberflus because it's, Dre Greenlaw, if he plays all season, great. But I think recent history tells us you can't expect that. So, is Nick Martin going to be that guy that steps in right away? Is a rookie like Jaden Duggar going to earn some playing time in a creative kind of rover role for the 49ers? They're talking so much about adaptability on the back end. And when you go back to what Raheem Morris ran in LA when he had Jalen Ramsey in that Super Bowl winning year in 2021. It was called the star position with Jalen Ramsey. And what that meant is that he was playing outside cornerback and slot cornerback and shifting as necessary based on how the number one of other teams lined up. So he essentially was trailing guys. Lenoir has been really damn good. I want to see how Raheem Morris uses him. Yes, by traveling, you mean playing corner on both sides or following an opponent's best receiver. He might be doing it some of the time, and they might be in zone another portion of the time. I think that or they could be running a hybrid defense too. You could try to take out JSN or Puka Nacua with Lenoir and play zone with other guys, kind of like a box and one in basketball. There are many different possibilities, and I think when we talk about hybridization, Raheem Morris might be the best equipped defensive coordinator to do that since he's worked with so many different schemes over the course of his career. At what point do they release Brandon Aiyuk to open up the 53-man roster spot? He's not taking up a 53-man roster spot. That's the thing. Like, he would actually have to show up before the cut down at the end of August to grab that 53-man roster spot, or at least put the 49ers in position, like to sweat some bullets there. He'd have to show up, pass the physical. Otherwise, they can just keep him on the left squad list, and it comes at no cost to the 49ers. Again, Aiyuk has to do something for the status quo to change. Jack asks, could the Commanders agree to fork over $43 million in advance of Brandon Aiyuk signing a new deal? No, $43 million is not going to be paid to Brandon Aiyuk by anybody. If he has another chance to play again, it will be on the minimum. He's not going to play under his existing contract. All of that is funny money at this point. It is not guaranteed. If Aiyuk forces himself in line to make that money, then he will be cut, or he'll be, something will happen. He's not going to play on as large of a contract as he has right now. You can toss out $43 million and all that. That's not going to happen for Brandon Aiyuk. Say that Falcons beat the Rams last season. Morris has McVay's number. He also has clamps on Purdy. You think Morris has clamps on Purdy? Then the 49. Well, I guess Purdy was hurt at the time. That was Mac Jones. But when did we see Raheem Morris face Brock Purdy? Has that happened? Trying to remember Morris Purdy matchup. Well, he's seen it at practice. That's for sure. And they got a couple interceptions, but Purdy also torched them deep. All right, I got one more question, and then I got to get going here. Doesn't look like we have a good one. Everybody, thanks for watching. That's the latest on Brandon Aiyuk. Crazy times. We'll talk to you very soon.